My message to you innovators out there is you may have the best technology in the world. It may be cutting edge. It may be really sexy. It may get you a Nature Science cell or whichever, top journal publication out there. But when you're trying to take your innovations outside of the pure academic context into a real world environment, you really need to think about the problems that you're going to solve. Hi, my name is Modupe Olufemi. I'm an advisor of business development at MyTac. So after I left graduate school at the University of Toronto, I realized that I wanted to take the experiences I was having as a life science graduate and combine that with the extracurricular experiences I had in consulting-like or medical strategy roles and really advise companies on how they can position their products and services better, especially in a science space. People would be surprised to find out how much innovation is actually happening behind the scenes at the academic institutions. In fact, I got the chance to attend a one-year anniversary event for SpinUp, one of U of T's wet lab incubators. And one of the presenters from AbbVie actually pointed out that a lot of pharmaceutical companies are starting to realize that they can't do a lot of that in-house R&D on their own. And now their strategy is to go out and look for spin-outs who are developing new therapeutics. And so it helps to build those relationships with the academic institutions. So you see larger pharmas, medium-sized players starting to build those closer relationships with some of the academic institutions to really drive this innovation forward. And if you are an innovator looking to start something, whether you are a grad student or a professor or someone who has some other tie to a post-secondary institution, you may want to think about the ideas that could come out because there probably is some larger entity that's also interested in it as well. One of the challenges with working with academic institutions, but also in the innovation journey in general, is a lot of companies don't take the time to really think about IP. IP is so critical whether you're trying to secure investment or to really position yourself in a particular market. And I think it's important for people to have those very difficult conversations about, okay, what is the best strategy for securing IP and taking IP forward? I know that for a lot of academic institutions, they derive a lot of benefit from also generating, if not being attached to IP. So if you know that you want to benefit from the brilliant minds at universities like the University of Toronto, UWaterloo, or even McMaster, you may want to get in touch with their tech transfer office as soon as possible, because sometimes the way that the language in those policies is written is a lot scarier than how it's actually practiced. And it takes getting those conversations. And so what's nice is that if you have access to an advisor at MyTax or OCI or one of these other organizations, they usually do have a relationship with one of these tech transfer offices. And in their networks, they usually have access to people who have that IP expertise, whether it's at IPON or it's at one of the firms that manages IP law. We can connect you to those resources so that you can be more intentional, because companies that do think about their IP journey tend to actually do better in terms of attracting investment, in terms of developing their products and asserting a competitive advantage. And remembering that there's more to IP than just, your patent. You also have to think about your brand identity as well. And that's very important for securing the materials that will help you distinguish yourself from your competitors and things like this. So it's very helpful to have those more challenging conversations, as difficult as they are early on, because as you're entering agreements with people who will use your technology, people who exist in your supply chain, as well as, research collaborators, it takes a lot of that time out that would cause delays for the progress you're trying to make. If you want to enter the Canadian market, I find it helpful to really partner with key institutions that are relevant for the product or service that you're trying to develop. So for example, it's important to think about what's going to secure those results that will get you the Health Canada approval you need, whether it's for a device or a biologic. So it may be helpful to partner with key research hospitals. It may be helpful to partner with potential distributors or manufacturers of, your software, your device, your drug. Because I know for a lot of the non-dilutive sources of funding, especially, it's critical to have a partnership with a Canadian entity. And I find that that's usually the best way to make a case for your entry into the market, because it also allows you to build sort of a project where you can actually validate what you're doing and make make sure that it really fits into the way that healthcare is delivered in Canada. Canada has a very good innovation ecosystem in the sense that there's a lot of sources of non-dilutive funding for startups, right? I know a lot of people have this idea, okay, let's go to the US and get as much money as possible. But if you're not somebody who has a lot of traction, or you're not somebody who's trying to get a large check, it can be very hard to get your foot in the door. Whereas, there's lots of wraparound support in the form of non-dilutive funding. So in Ontario, for example, we have the Centre for Aging and Brain Health Institute, as well as the Ontario Brain Institute, that have really good programs that support ventures in the neurosciences. Among some of those companies are companies that are working at the intersection of AI and neuroscience, which is very fascinating and very big for health. You have organizations like MyTax, where I work as well, that really help you build those talent pipelines as well as strategic relationships with academic institutions so that you can really take your service or product a lot further with that expertise that you need to make sure that it's very functional. There's lots of that cross-pollination that's going on. I think one of the challenges is getting companies to scale, and that's why it's nice that the Toronto Business Development Center and other programs have relationships with companies abroad or institutions abroad that can really help you find sort of those clients in other markets. My message to you innovators out there is you may have the best technology in the world, it may be cutting edge, it may be really sexy, it may get you a Nature, Science, Cell, or whichever, top journal publication out there. But when you're trying to take your innovations outside of the pure academic context into a real world environment, you really need to think about the problems that you're going to solve. You can have like the perfect drug, for example, but if the route of delivery is not accessible for patients or it's really expensive, it's virtually useless as a therapy and it's not really helping those people that you're going to serve. So I really encourage those innovators to really go out and talk to potential customers, potential end users, everybody who will be involved in the delivery and use of those healthcare solutions, because that will help you realize, okay, it's not just about the technology, it's not just about the disease mechanism, it's not just about, this very specific clinical outcome, but how does this actually bring benefit to all the people involved in the process? So I really encourage you to really do a lot more stakeholder engagement because it will really help you position your products a lot more effectively.